Okay, greetings, Earthlings, and we are back with another episode of the Galactic Visitor Center. I am Michael Clancy, and my co-host is Marcellus Winters.
Hello.
And today we have the honor of interviewing Cale Lewis, who is very, very unique in an experiencer's world. Very intentional. And without much further ado, I'm going to let Cale explain um, his experiences and what he's been seeing. Cale,
Okay. Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael and Marcellus. Wow. Okay. So I would say that my journey into an obsession with UAPs and everything else along those lines started last year on 4/20, April 20th. I remember that because because I was picking up my daughter that day, and we both came home, and she'll remember that day as well. And that was the day that I watched the 60 Minutes episode where they interviewed Lou Elizondo.
Elizondo,
Alexander.
yeah, yeah.
And to me, before that moment in time, I had no belief in extraterrestrials or anything. I had been fed the stuff the government has been pouring down our throats for 70 years, that those people are potheads and tinfoil hat people, and that's just what I believed. I went to school. We were told that information, and yeah. But then I watched that episode, and you could tell that the people that they interviewed in that episode were not lying, and what they were talking about was essentially miraculous. They're talking about crafts that were interacting with our our Navy pilots, and going faster than anything that we could record. And they've actually got it on video, and they shared those videos. And then they interviewed, I believe his name was Ryan Graves, and he was saying they're interacting with them on a daily basis for years.
Yeah.
And so you watch that and you believe that, which I did, and my whole world changed right there. And so then you start trying to find sources, and eventually I focused in on some podcasts, the UFO podcasts, or that UFO podcast. And
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that was around back then. I don't know what episode they were on, but then you start reading some books, which is something I hadn't done for years. Like, I wasn't a big book reader. Now I hardly watch TV anymore. I wouldn't say I watch TV. I'm just constantly trying to find sources, and the sources that are put in my path. And every time you read a book, and every time you have some sort of revelation, your mind opens a little bit more about the realm of possibilities. And so I developed a huge interest in it. Now, I was someone who was interested in astronomy as a kid, completely. I had a telescope growing up. I was interested in space and everything along those lines, but the alien aspect of it, or the phenomenon aspect of it, was just not a possibility to me. But then you listen to books by Whitley Strieber, and just multiple sources. And I think the key in my experience was I listened to those books, because I usually go for a walk in the woods behind my house listening to a book. I can zone in and really focus in on what I'm listening to. And I believed that stuff. And I think that was the key. What I was hearing from these authors and experiencers and such was really striking a chord with me. I saw no reason for these people to be lying. Right.
Right.
So in my brain, I had this whole new set of beliefs, and it excited me. So my brain is excited, and I'm getting sources of information. And I came to my wife one day and I said, you know what? I'm loving this. I've found my passion. I'm going to go to this MUFON conference in Denver, Colorado. And she was like, fine, whatever, it's fine. Follow your passion. She sure as heck isn't going with me. But so I flew there on, I guess it was July 7th of this year, arrived in downtown Denver, Colorado, and checked into the hotel, and went for a walk. It was like, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. The conference starts the next morning. And Denver, at this point, I'm not an experiencer. I'm just someone with an absolute obsession and excitement for the topic, right? I've always been a pretty bright guy. So the information that I take in, I'm able to put things together and say, okay, well, that and that, these people are both, anyway. So I go out on a walk, I'm coming back to the hotel, and in the corner of my eye, I see a bright light that jags really quick. And I know right away that that's something different. So I instantly get my phone out and start videotaping it. And I know instantly that what I'm videotaping is something other than a normal, it's not a drone, it's not an airplane, it's just a light hovering. It slowly moves over top of the UFO hotel, the Sheraton or whatever it was. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is clearly because this hotel is loaded with all the people who are connected to the topic for their whole lives. Like, it's the MUFON convention. And I'm like, I'm just fortunate that I'm getting a chance to video it. But, you know, this is probably normal for these people. These people are probably seeing this all the time. So I videotaped that for like 6 minutes. It slowly moves out of my line of sight over top of the hotel. And I grab my grocery bag and I go down the street because I saw the direction it was going. And then it came out from the top of the hotel, and I videotaped it again. And this time there was a gentleman walking down the street, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, that's a UFO up there. And he looked at me like I was, you know, out of my mind, and he didn't check out the UFO. But yeah, so then I get back into the hotel. I get into the elevator with someone who might be part of the MUFON convention, and I'm like, I just videotaped a UAP. And I remember the lady, she's like, is everything okay? Do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm excited. Like, this is awesome, you know? And so then I'm at the conference, and I'm the only one who saw the UAP. I'm the only one who videoed it. And it kind of made me like, you know, a person of interest at the conference, I guess. And it was at that conference that I really felt like something was at work in my reality that was putting me in the path of the people who are most connected to the topic. Like, at one point I was sitting on a couch, and I felt thirsty. So I went to the water cooler, and some gentleman had a glass of water that he had just filled up, and he gave it to me. He looked like a nice guy. So I struck up a conversation with him. And then after talking to him for about 5 minutes, I looked down at his name tag, and I was talking to Hynek, the son of the gentleman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jalen Hynek's son.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I'm talking to him, and while I'm talking to him, other people who are speakers at the conference are coming up. It just seemed like wherever I went that weekend, like one time I went out on the street, I was coming back, one of the speakers came out. He said, hey, do you want to go for dinner? I'm like, oh, sure, let's go for dinner. It just seemed like, yeah.
Wow.
So it was like, it seemed like everywhere I turned, I was like, the first night I went down to the bar and saw all the people with the banners at this table, but there was no seats. And I said, oh, okay. And one of the guys, anyway, regardless, a seat opened up. Someone came and sat me down. And so I'm talking, and after about an hour, the person beside me said, do you realize who I am? And I'm like, no. She says, do you know who this guy beside me is? And she's like, well, this is the president of MUFON, and I'm his wife. And so it was just like everything that happened that weekend was just like, it made me think that my path and the interaction with reality was something other than just me. That's the way it made me feel. I was confident of that. So
that's super interesting because almost every experiencer that we've talked to has felt like it was part of a bigger thing. Like they had it was especially Costa McCreese and Gracie. They both had the sense that they were experiencing things because it was their job to tell people about it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like opening up the minds to the possibilities of something other than just nuts and bolts reality. I think that is truly a motivating factor, right? Because once it's happened to you, you realize that there's something other than just I call it nuts and bolts reality. Just like the regular life that I lived before 420 of last year, where
Right.
you're motivated to do things and you go do them. But now I think there's something else that kind of is in my reality all the time, and it's nothing but good. I call it like phenomenon. It's the phenomenon. That's what I call it, and it has an ability to make things happen that are good. We've had a tremendous summer. This community, like everybody around here, if you ask them, they'll say it's the best summer they've ever had. This whole community, like
That's amazing.
yeah. The year before, we had an absolute dreadful year. 2021 we had forest fires around this community, and we didn't see the sun for 4 months. It was just smoke. We had atmospheric river wipe out all our bridges.
Where are you located?
I live in British Columbia, in the interior of BC, we just our province burnt last year, but this year there hasn't been one day the entire summer that you couldn't say the weather was absolutely perfect for whatever you're doing, whether you're having a barbecue, you're going golfing, maybe a day you actually wanted some rain. Well, it rained that day. It was just like it's been incredible, and I have this theory that we all got beat down so bad mentally, and that manifested with shit for everybody. We had lots of suicides. I personally struggled with just life and anxiety and such. And as I worked out of that, things started to happen that were like incredible. Like
I almost don't believe it because of just the positive energy every time I have spoken to you, Cale. Like you just like I've not shared the room with you, but you fill the virtual room with positivity. Like you really do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no,
that's surprising to me that you had such a bad year, because like you're not living that year now.
No, absolutely not.
Also, don't you think life is very much, it's peaks and valleys. So whenever you're going through a bad period, the only thing I think is, well, that means a good period is coming up soon. Like it's like I'm due for an upswing. So
yeah, no, absolutely. The problem is if the downswing is so bad that you don't necessarily know you're going to be able to make your way out of it. Right? That can be scary. But I've had that happen to me a few times in my past. Essentially, it equates to setting my own personal standards too high, so you put too much pressure on yourself. And then for me, it's been a learning lesson a couple of times, and it's generated a whole bunch of anxiety. And eventually, you work your way out of it. This last time it happened, it was a little bit more difficult because I have a family and kids, and my instinct was to get out of Dodge. Like my instinct was, I gotta get out of this situation, but you can't get out of a situation when you've got a wife and family that you love, right?
Oh, sure you can. You just leave.
Well, people do.
Remember the good old days when you could just head across country, start a new life?
Go out for a cigarette.
That's actually how I started. I was adopted, and my mother, my birth mother, got pregnant in Halifax, which is on the other side of the country.
Right.
And she got out of Dodge, and she drove all the way across Canada and gave birth to me in Vancouver.
Wow.
So and then later in life, when I was something like I was probably about 37 or something like that, I actually connected with my birth parents and found them, and so that was a really interesting experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. So you had this at a young, like you're starting out kind of just having to find your own way. It sounds like you in life, you've kind of found your own way professionally. And then you go to MUFON, you find your own way, and you're suddenly like networking with like some of the highest recognizable people in that world.
Yeah.
That's some like extreme manifestation. That is like amazing.
I like to, and in my mind, I have my theory of life. Life is very much like a video game, and when we basically each we're supposed to make it through the levels of our life. There's 99 levels, and basically sometimes you'll make a connection. Something will happen for you, and you break through to that next level. And like you said, all these things start happening for you. It's like the game opens up to you. It's like
100%.
it's like
Absolutely.
new levels appear to you. Like, oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you can follow your path, and the only direction that we're really given on that, first of all, you got to find your path, then you got to follow it. So you find your excitement, you find whatever's making you excited, whatever's making you happy, and then you go with that. Don't ignore those sorts of feelings, right?
Mhm.
And as a result of that, if manifestations, I believe, are going to happen more effectively if you're, on the right path. If whoever's working the avatar of you is managing to get you in on the right path, then
Right.
you're going to get signs. You're going to get synchronicities.
Right.
You're going to get things are going to happen that all of a sudden you're like, wow, that is a tremendously good coincidence.
Mhm.
And that's been happening to me for the past, like, ever since July, that it's just like unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, when I flew home from the conference in Denver, we actually had another a holiday planned, a camping trip with my entire family, and my wife's sisters and their kids. And the very first night that we're out camping, we're sitting around the fire, and all of a sudden, across the mountain and across the lake comes a very, very bright light, and I instantly know that that's not a plane. I just spent like a lot of time looking at my video. I knew instantly it was something else. So I see my first one in Denver. 3 days later, I come home, sitting around the a campfire. See that? I run to the motorhome, grab my phone, and start videotaping this with my whole family, all the young cousins. Everybody's looking at it, and that one lasted in the sky for probably about 7 minutes. I didn't know at that point, like, I was videotaping that one because I didn't know at that point that they were going to come as often as they did on that camping trip. We're talking like, as long as I was awake and with my camera in the hand, these things were flying over top of us. And at the end of the night, everyone's in bed and I'm sitting outside the motorhome, and another one comes and I'm like talking to the air saying, I got to go to bed, guys. Thank you. Like, I don't know. Like, this is just like, and I remember I reached out to a few people at MUFON that I had met, and I was like, okay, this is happening. Do you have any advice to me? Because there's a little bit of trepidation at that point. Like,
Sure.
am I connected to some sort of beings? At that point, I wasn't too sure. But since then, I've had so many things appear in the sky that my perception of what is occurring has changed. I no longer believe that what I'm seeing is the result of anything to do with aliens. That's just the way I see it. I see it as I see our sky like an LCD screen for the phenomenon. It can
Mhm.
it can present stuff anytime it wants if the right person is asking. Uh, I've since then I've been outside at night and I'll ask a question and I'll see a very bright light, like a strobe light at a disco, boom, in the sky. And I've talked to other experiencers who've said, yes, that happens to me. So you can get a response from the sky wherever you're looking.
That's amazing.
I got to tell you, they must have changed the remote codes on me because I'm also on your coast. I live out in Oregon, and I've gotten into a lot of camping, and I try to go outside. I've tried to spend as many nights outside in the summer as I can,
Yeah,
and I'm approaching like 20 nights this summer, and going camping again this weekend. But try to always do some sky gazing. But I've tried the channeling. I've tried and I feel like I just get a whole lot of Starlink satellites.
Yeah, have you had the Starlink satellites?
Yes, yes.
I had my first presentation of the Starlink satellites on Monday evening, and Monday evening. That's a couple days ago, I guess. Actually, it was 2 days ago. That was after I did my presentation for the local community, and I was extremely happy about that being done, because a little bit of stress to get that presentation done. So I go out in the dark above my house here, and just feeling extremely happy and excited and grateful. And I asked the sky, I say, I would really love a presentation of the phenomenon right now. So within 30 seconds, to over on the left-hand side of me, I see what would be described as the Starlink satellites. And I've posted that video on Twitter, but it's pretty faded. And it's essentially a row of lights going completely horizontal. And I suspect that probably was one of the Starlink satellite strings. They were all really close together, and they only lasted in the sky for literally 27 seconds. That's my video. I saw them. I started videoing right away. I was extremely happy because I'd never seen anything like that before. 27 seconds. So now I'm up in the woods in the dark, and I'm just extremely happy that I've captured something. And I'm like, oh, good, I'm going to have a video for Twitter. I'm happy, right? So I put on some music. I'm dancing, when all of a sudden, on the other side of the sky, which would be a completely different presentation of lights, who knows? Maybe it's the Starlink. It really didn't feel like the Starlink. This one lasted 7 minutes, and it was, and it's probably my last video that I posted on Twitter. It started at the top of this tree, and then every one of them just kind of in a straight line. And then when they got up to the other part of the sky, they spread out. Maybe that's just the optical illusion of seeing them in the distance and then above me. But yeah, I mean, they were so crystal clear. I'd like to know if anyone has a 7-minute presentation of those Starlink satellites. How slow do they go across the sky? I don't think they're that slow. Every video that I've seen about the Starlink, it's less than a minute. They go across the sky and they're gone.
Yeah, it's like a sky train. It's moving pretty.
Yeah, sky train. So I mean, some people are saying that the phenomenon is perhaps using this Starlink as a thing to get people looking at the sky. Like, I saw 2 Starlink satellite chains within a couple of minutes of each other, essentially, and one of them, So it's possible they were both Starlink. I don't know. But I sure felt like it was something other than Starlink, and I'm gonna go up there and ask again and see if I can capture it again.
Cale, do you have there's a couple of good like apps on your phone for the night sky, and the one that I have will actually tell you when Starlink is above you.
Oh, cool.
Which one do I use here? It's Night Sky. It's an iOS one.
Is it the Google Night Sky?
Yeah,
I use the one by Google. It's the best.
Oh, okay.
It probably is Google.
I use Flight Tracker.
I got it for iOS. Yeah, so this one actually, like, I can see when like any satellite, including those, are going across. It'll also tell you when you're going to be passed over by like the International Space Station. It's kind of cool.
Yes.
On top of the normal data that it shows you about constellations, stars, and planets.
I use Skyview Light, which tells you all the planets and shows you the space station, but not as many satellites, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely get one that tracks the satellites, because that, especially for you, because you're having all of these experiences, it'll be a quick way for you to be like, yes, that is, no, that isn't, and then the other thing I really want is to encourage you to get like a really good camera. Like, like one that has like a real telescopic like lens, and like you can really do some like distance detail, because
that's a good idea.
I'm looking at your videos online between TikTok, Twitter. You have some of the most compelling videos I think I've ever seen, and what's even more compelling is that you're summoning them, right? Like you're either positive vibrations or your actual intent in your mind, you're summoning them.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't. Okay, yeah. it's true that they do appear when I'm in a position to videotape them. And there's been situations where I've gone out, my daughter and her friends are having a little dance party on the pool deck, and I stood at the side of our pool and I said, this would be a great time to get a video, because I can capture some of the excitement of the kids in the background, and then instantly there it is. The light comes up above the mountain, and so that has occurred. But my thinking on me summoning them, I think more like I believe that it's using me as a tool,
or you're just open to it.
I'm open to it. It sees me as someone who's going to post stuff. When I went to that MUFON convention, I almost guarantee there was no one else there with 80,000 TikTok followers, or a social media addiction that I know I have a propensity for. So I mean, they recognize this person who's pretty well. And when I was talking to a lot of the MUFON people, I knew a considerable more about everything than they did. I'd read more books. I was very surprised. I'm talking to these people that were, arguably involved with the phenomenon for decades, and I'm brand new to it. And I found myself a better source of information than most of the people I talked to.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
That's interesting.
And so the fact that I'm the person who ends up being the one who's, communicating and opening up minds, and I can tell you that in my group of friends, it's now a given. It's not even a surprise. They've all seen it themselves. It's just kind of the norm. My wife and her sister and another friend of mine, we were at a concert one night, a local outdoor music festival, and we walked back from the music festival. We had our motorhome parked so we could sleep there near the music festival. We were all just comparing notes at like 1 a.m. when all of a sudden, this was got to be the most incredible presentation that we had. There was essentially a triangle craft, 3 glowing orbs triangle, but it was close. I swear, if I whipped a golf ball as hard as I could, it probably could have hit whatever was being presented to us. So wow. I didn't see it first. It was my wife's sister who said, "What's that?" Lindsay's like, "Oh my God." My wife's like that. And then I looked up, I'm like, "Oh my God." So I reached for my phone. The craft it was going relatively quickly. And then I ran around the motorhome as I was fumbling with my phone. And I didn't get it on video, but yeah, but that was incredible. And that night I was a little bit going to sleep in my motorhome. I was a little nervous because I felt like if that's just the phenomenon presenting in our sky, that felt like that was a little bit more than just lights in the sky. That felt like it's a possibility that, who knows, maybe there was some kind of electronic thing that was projecting that in the sky. You might have heard of there's been that picture, I think in 1979, of the family in the station wagon who had a big flying saucer over their car, and then
yes,
the kid in the back takes the picture, and when they develop the picture, there's no saucer there, but there is this like a device that's about the size of my hand right in the middle of where the saucer would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my perception, that was what I was thinking. Okay, so if they're paying enough attention to me that there's actually a physical electronic device projecting something, that made me a little bit like, okay, what's going on? That was maybe
it's very close and personal. Yeah.
But when I think back on it and sober out a bit, I think that what we saw could have just simply been a projection in the LCD screen of the sky. It's possible. But the beauty of it is to have my wife and my wife's sister and one of my friends to witness it that close, and to have that, communal ability to, I don't need to shout at the top of my lungs saying I saw a UFO. I can talk about it with the people who are closest to me. And it's become kind of a non-issue. We don't even talk about it. It's just like, oh yeah, there's Cale with his phone filming the frickin' UAPs again. Like,
It's amazing. No, that's amazing. Cale, I'd like to watch one together. I can do that here. And then we can kind of like talk about that one specifically because
sure.
you have so many, but I'm
Okay.
going to take the one that you pinned on Twitter. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
Join us on our next episode where we watch the video and continue our conversation with Cale.